Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the most explosive, deeply analyzed, and emotionally charged update from the captivating world of daytime drama. Today is a thrilling day to dive into the latest shocking developments that are shaking the very foundations of Los Angeles, as a cataclysmic confrontation threatens to alter the landscape of Forrester Creations forever. The hallowed halls of Forrester Creations have long been the epicenter of glamorous fashion, corporate espionage, and bitter familial rivalries. Yet, nothing could have prepared the employees, the executives, or the legacy family for the sheer visceral magnitude of the storm that has just made landfall within the executive suites. The simmering tensions between the Forrester and Logan factions have finally reached an absolute boiling point, culminating in a devastating physical and emotional confrontation that will leave an indelible mark on the history of the company. The catalyst for this unprecedented explosion of rage is a profound betrayal that strikes at the very heart of the Forrester family hierarchy, a betrayal orchestrated by ambition and executed through the devastating passivity of a patriarch who has lost his way. To truly understand the gravity of the impending explosion, one must first look at the shattered state of Steffy Forrester Finnegan. For years, Steffy has been the iron-willed, uncompromising titan of Forrester Creations. She has worn her COSO title not merely as a corporate designation, but as a sacred birthright, a mantle of responsibility she inherited and fiercely protected. She has weathered countless storms, fended off corporate coups, and maintained an unyielding facade of strength. However, the recent actions of her father, Ridge Forrester, have achieved what no corporate rival ever could. They have completely broken her. Ridge's agonizing, guilt-ridden demand that Steffy step down from her rightful throne to make way for the insatiable ambition of Brooke Logan Forrester has fractured Steffy's spirit. Behind the closed doors of her office, the Iron Maiden wept. The sight of Steffy sobbing, her shoulders shaking with the profound weight of a father's ultimate betrayal, is a visual that shatters the heart. She is not crying over a lost job. She is mourning the realization that in the ultimate test of loyalty, her father chose his wife's demands over his own flesh and blood. It is in this moment of raw, unadulterated vulnerability that Taylor Hayes discovers her daughter. Taylor, a woman who has spent decades navigating the treacherous emotional minefields laid by the Logan women, walks into the room and witnesses the devastating collateral damage of Ridge's latest capitulation. The psychological trigger this activates within Taylor is instantaneous and terrifying. For Taylor, this is not a new narrative. It is the agonizing repetition of a generational trauma. She has spent her entire adult life watching Brooke Logan systematically dismantle her happiness, steal her peace, and manipulate the man she loved. Now, to see that exact same predatory ambition being weaponized against her own daughter, stripping Steffy of her dignity and her rightful place, awakens a primal, matriarchal fury within Taylor that cannot be contained or reasoned with. The transition within Taylor is absolute. She ceases to be the calm, rational psychiatrist and instantly transforms into an avenging warrior. The maternal instinct to protect her young overrides every ounce of professional decorum and lingering affection she might have harbored for Ridge. Taylor's internal landscape becomes a singular, burning focus. Ridge must be made to face the catastrophic reality of what he has done. He can no longer hide behind his passive demeanor or his vague justifications. He has allowed his daughter to be sacrificed on the altar of Brooke Logan's ego, and Taylor is determined to deliver the reckoning he so desperately deserves. As Taylor marches through the corridors of Forrester Creations, the atmosphere shifts palpably. The air grows thick with an electric tension. Employees who catch a glimpse of her face instinctively step aside, parting like the Red Sea before her righteous wrath. The usual hum of sewing machines, the frantic chatter of marketing executives, and the clicking of heels on hardwood floors all seem to fade into an eerie, suffocating silence. Everyone can sense that a detonation is imminent. Taylor does not knock when she reaches the heavy, imposing doors of the CEO's suite. She does not pause to collect her thoughts or moderate her breathing. She breaches the room with the force of a hurricane, bringing the full, devastating weight of her maternal fury directly into the sanctuary of the man who caused this destruction. Inside the office, Ridge Forrester is already a man drowning in a sea of his own making. The timeline of his recent decisions reveals a patriarch paralyzed by severe, creeping doubt. Ever since he delivered the crushing blow to Steffy, suggesting she take a demotion to appease Brooke's sudden, hope-driven thirst for power, Ridge has been wrestling with a suffocating guilt. He knows, deep in the recesses of his soul, that he has crossed a line that should never have been approached. He stands by the expansive glass windows, overlooking the sprawling city of Los Angeles, feeling the heavy, isolating crown of leadership pressing down upon him. But nothing prepares him for the violent interruption of his brooding silence. When the doors fly open, Ridge turns to see Taylor standing there, her eyes blazing with a hellfire he has rarely witnessed. Before he can even attempt to formulate a greeting or a defense, the verbal assault begins. Taylor's voice, sharp and trembling with absolute rage, slices through the sterile air of the executive office. She does not mince words. She explicitly details the heartbreaking scene she has just witnessed. Their brilliant, fiercely loyal daughter sobbing uncontrollably because her own father decided she was expendable. Taylor paints a vivid, excruciating picture of Steffy's pain, forcing Ridge to look at the emotional carnage he has authorized. But Taylor does not stop at outlining the damage. She viciously attacks the root cause. She screams that Ridge has become nothing more than a pathetic, tragic puppet dancing on the strings of Brooke Logan. She dissects his lack of agency with surgical precision, highlighting how Brooke, radicalized and pushed by a disgruntled hope, orchestrated this hostile takeover, and Ridge simply bowed his head and executed their demands. Taylor accuses him of surrendering his spine, his authority, and his fundamental duty as a father just to keep the peace in his bedroom. The accusation of being a puppet is not just an insult. It is a profound psychological indictment of Ridge's entire character, laying bare his historical weakness when it comes to the demands of the Logan women. The tension in the room reaches an unbearable crescendo. Ridge attempts to open his mouth, perhaps to offer a weak justification, perhaps to utter a hollow apology, but the words die in his throat. And then, the physical climax of decades of frustration, heartbreak, and betrayal manifests in a single, explosive motion. Taylor Hayes, unable to contain the volcanic eruption of her disgust, steps forward and delivers a resounding, sky-shattering slap across Ridge Forrester's face. The physical impact is violent, a sharp, cracking sound that echoes violently off the glass walls and mahogany furnishings of the office. The sheer force of the strike snaps Ridge's head to the side, leaving a burning, crimson imprint of Taylor's hand on his cheek. This is not a mere slap. It is a physical manifestation of a mother's broken heart. It is the release of years of pent-up agony, a punishing blow delivered on behalf of every tear Steffy has ever shed because of the Logan family's relentless encroachment. The sound of the slap reverberates beyond the walls of the office, freezing the employees in the outer reception area in stunned, breathless silence. The professional facade of Forrester Creations is entirely shattered in that singular moment, replaced by the raw, ugly reality of a family tearing itself apart at the seams. Following the physical strike, Taylor does not retreat. She does not exhibit a single ounce of regret or shock at her own actions. Instead, she leans in, her face inches from the man she once believed was the love of her life, and delivers the final, devastating psychological blows. She screams that he has lost completely the conscience of a father. She declares that a real man, a real protector, would have stood as an impenetrable shield between his daughter and anyone who sought to tear her down, even his own wife. By facilitating Brooke's power play, Ridge has proven himself morally bankrupt, prioritizing his marital comfort over the psychological well-being and hard-earned legacy of his child. Ridge's reaction to this onslaught is perhaps the most tragic element of the entire confrontation. He stands absolutely frozen, paralyzed by the overwhelming, suffocating truth of Taylor's words. He makes no move to defend himself, no attempt to raise his voice, no effort to justify the unjustifiable. His silence is the ultimate confession. He is trapped in a prison of his own making, pinned down by the undeniable reality that he has failed his daughter in the most spectacular and public way possible. He looks into Taylor's eyes, searching desperately for a flicker of the profound, enduring love that defined their history for decades. But he finds nothing. The gaze Taylor fixes upon him is entirely devoid of warmth, affection, or even pity. It is a look of pure, unadulterated hatred and profound disgust. The ashes of their past romance, the legacy of Tridge, are blown away in the hurricane of her contempt. In that moment, Ridge realizes that he has not just angered his ex-wife. He has permanently destroyed the foundational respect she held for him. He is looking at a woman who no longer sees him as a flawed but loving patriarch, but as a weak, compromised shell of a man who sold his daughter's birthright for Brooke Logan's approval. The broader implications of this explosive encounter cannot be overstated. This slap is not an isolated incident of domestic frustration. It is a formal, violent declaration of war. The battle lines, which have occasionally blurred over the years in the name of blended family harmony, are now drawn in thick, impenetrable blood. It is the Forrester faction against the Logan faction, with no room for neutrality or compromise. Taylor has officially taken up the mantle of the fierce Forrester matriarch, drawing a line in the sand and daring anyone to cross it. She has served notice that the subjugation of her children will no longer be tolerated, and that any move against Steffy will be met with disproportionate and devastating retaliation. As Taylor finally turns her back on Ridge, her posture rigid with righteous indignation, she leaves him standing in the dead center of his sprawling office. The door clicks shut behind her, sealing Ridge in a tomb of profound, echoing isolation. The reality of his situation crashes down upon him with the weight of a collapsing building. He is utterly and completely alone. He has alienated his fierce, brilliant daughter, driving her to tears and breaking her trust. He has enraged the mother of his children, transforming her into a relentless enemy. And he is now entirely dependent on the very woman whose ambition ignited this inferno. Ridge Forrester, the supposed king of Los Angeles fashion, is left surveying a kingdom that he himself has reduced to ashes, haunted by the stinging pain on his cheek and the undeniable truth that the war for Forrester Creations has only just begun. And he has already suffered the most devastating casualties. For decades, the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations have been the ultimate battleground for the legacy families of Los Angeles, a place where silk and chiffon often mask the sharpest of corporate daggers. Yet, nothing in the storied history of this fashion empire could have prepared the industry for the seismic paradigm shift currently unfolding. The long-standing narrative of the virtuous, endlessly forgiving Hope Logan has been violently shattered, replaced by a chilling metamorphosis that is sending shockwaves through the very foundation of the company. The era of the good girl, who turns the other cheek and accepts her marginalization with quiet grace, is officially dead and buried. In her place, stand a woman who has finally reached her absolute breaking point, a woman who has realized that playing by the rules of morality only guarantees a permanent seat in the shadows. Hope Logan Spencer has crossed the Rubicon, embracing the darkest, most ruthless tactics imaginable to permanently dismantle the reign of Steffy Forrester Finnegan. The psychological unraveling of Hope Logan did not happen overnight. It was a slow, agonizing death by 1,000 paper cuts, orchestrated primarily by Steffy's condescending leadership. For months, Steffy has systematically dismantled the Hope for the Future brand, using the prioritization of Eric Forster's couture line as a convenient, unassailable excuse to shelve Hope's life's work. The final catalyst was not just the business decision itself, but the sheer arrogance with which Steffy delivered it, the dismissive shrug, the mocking challenge of "or what?" that echoed in Hope's mind long after she left the executive office. That single moment of supreme hubris from Steffy ignited a dormant, malevolent fire within Hope. She realized that appealing to Ridge's sense of fairness or relying on her mother's influence would never be enough to secure her legacy. To defeat a monster, one must become a monster. Hope made the conscious, terrifying decision to abandon the moral high ground that had defined her entire existence, plunging instead into the murky depths of corporate espionage and blackmail. Driven by a newfound, cold-blooded determination, Hope began a relentless, clandestine investigation into the innermost workings of Forrester Creations. She knew that Steffy, despite her flawless exterior and commanding presence, was not infallible. Everyone has a secret, and Hope was determined to find the skeleton hiding in Steffy's impeccably designed closet. Spending countless sleepless nights poring over encrypted financial records, confidential ledgers, and obscure corporate accounts, Hope's obsessive pursuit finally yielded a weapon of mass destruction. Buried deep within the labyrinthine accounting of the company's contingency funds, Hope discovered a trail of staggering financial discrepancies. It was a meticulously hidden web of deceit that revealed a truth so explosive it could shatter the Forrester legacy entirely. The evidence was undeniable and devastating. Steffy Forrester Finnegan had been secretly embezzling massive amounts of money from the company's emergency contingency funds. The purpose of this illicit siphoning was even more scandalous. Steffy was desperately covering up exorbitant, crippling personal debts accumulated during her extended time in Europe. These were not mere accounting errors. This was deliberate, calculated fraud. Steffy had leveraged the very lifeblood of her family's company to save her own skin, all while sitting on her co-CEO throne and preaching about the sanctity of Eric's couture and the financial responsibilities of the business. The sheer hypocrisy of Steffy's actions was staggering, but for Hope, it was the ultimate vindication. She did not feel the shock or dismay that the old Hope might have felt. Instead, a cold, calculating smile spread across her face. She held the key to Steffy's absolute destruction in the palm of her hand. Rather than taking this catastrophic evidence to Ridge Forrester, a move that would undoubtedly result in Ridge attempting to manage the scandal internally and protect his daughter, Hope chose a path of maximum psychological warfare. She bypassed the traditional channels of corporate justice, opting instead for a brutal, face-to-face confrontation that would strip Steffy of all her power and dignity. The atmosphere in the executive office on the day of the reckoning was thick with an eerie, suffocating tension. Steffy sat behind the massive glass desk, the undisputed queen of her domain, projecting her usual aura of untouchable authority. When Hope walked in, the door clicking shut with a profound sense of finality, Steffy prepared herself for another tearful plea regarding the hope for the future line. She was entirely unprepared for the executioner who had just entered her sanctuary. Hope did not yell. She did not cry. Her demeanor was terrifyingly serene, her eyes devoid of the warmth and empathy that had once been her trademark. Without a word, she slid a thick, manila folder across the smooth surface of the desk. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of Steffy's perfectly manicured fingers opening the file. As Steffy's eyes scanned the highlighted bank transfers, the hidden European accounts, and the undeniable proof of her embezzlement, the color rapidly drained from her face. The air seemed to vanish from the room. The invincible Steffy Forrester Finnegan was suddenly reduced to a cornered, hyperventilating animal. She looked up at Hope, searching for a trace of the forgiving girl she had bullied for years, but found only a reflection of her own worst nightmares. With a voice as cold and sharp as a scalpel, Hope laid out her uncompromising terms. There would be no negotiations, no family meetings, and no mercy. Hope demanded that Steffy immediately draft and sign a legally binding resignation letter, stepping down from her position as co-CEO of Forrester Creations. Furthermore, Steffy was to explicitly name Brooke Logan Forrester as her immediate successor, handing over the keys to the kingdom to the very woman she despised most. If Steffy refused, if she hesitated for even a moment, Hope promised to leak the entire dossier to the press, the board of directors, and the authorities. Steffy would not only lose her company, she would face criminal charges, public disgrace, and the total annihilation of her reputation. The trap was perfectly laid, and the steel jaws had snapped shut around Steffy's throat. The psychological agony of that moment for Steffy cannot be overstated. She was a proud Forrester, a woman who had fought tooth and nail to secure her position at the apex of the fashion world. To be brought down not by a corporate rival, but by Hope Logan, the woman she had consistently underestimated and belittled, was a humiliation that burned like acid in her veins. Cornered, terrified, and outmaneuvered, Steffy had no choice but to comply. With trembling hands and tears of pure, impotent rage stinging her eyes, she picked up her pen and signed away her legacy. The scratch of the pen against the paper sounded like the slamming of a prison door. Hope watched the entire process without a single flicker of emotion, a silent sentinel overseeing the execution of her greatest enemy. But Hope's vengeance did not end in the privacy of the executive office. To ensure that Steffy could never spin the narrative or mount a sudden counterattack, Hope orchestrated a public spectacle of submission. Steffy was forced to walk out of the office and face a gathering of the company's senior staff and executives. Choking back her bile, Steffy had to announce her immediate resignation, citing vague, personal reasons, and publicly endorse Brooke Logan Forrester as the new co-CEO. The shock on the faces of the employees was palpable, a collective gasp echoing through the design rooms. Steffy stood before them, stripped of her armor, enduring the ultimate indignity of public surrender. It was a masterclass in psychological domination, and Hope savored every agonizing second of Steffy's public humiliation. However, anyone who knows Steffy Forrester Finnegan knows that she is most dangerous when she is bleeding. As she retreated from the building, the crushing weight of her defeat began to curdle into a toxic, all-consuming vow of vengeance. She had lost the battle, and she had lost her throne, but the war was far from over. Steffy's brilliant, tactical mind immediately began to formulate a counteroffensive. She knew she could not fight Hope on a corporate level. The blackmail material was too damaging, the risk of prison too real. If she was going to destroy Hope, she had to strike at the very core of Hope's personal life. She had to take the one thing Hope valued even more than her career. As Steffy sat in the quiet darkness of her home, her eyes narrowed with a malevolent focus. Her target was clear: Liam Spencer. Steffy realized that Liam was the ultimate pawn in this newly escalated war. Liam, with his bleeding heart and his perpetual need to be the moral compass of the women he loved, would be deeply unsettled by the dark transformation of his wife. Steffy's plan was as brilliant as it was insidious. She would not approach Liam with anger or demands. She would approach him as a victim. She would play upon his inherent need to rescue damsels in distress. Steffy planned to slowly, methodically reveal to Liam the terrifying new depths of Hope's cruelty, painting herself as the tragic casualty of Hope's sudden, inexplicable descent into corporate tyranny. By seducing Liam, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, Steffy intended to poison the well of Hope's marriage. She would make Liam see that the sweet, innocent woman he married had been replaced by a ruthless, blackmailing monster. If Hope took Steffy's company, Steffy would take Hope's heart, leaving her with a hollow corporate crown and a shattered home. Meanwhile, the fallout from Hope's hostile takeover was causing profound tremors within the Logan camp, most notably within Brooke Logan Forrester. For weeks, Brooke had been fighting a bitter war to secure her place at the top of Forrester Creations. She had desperately wanted the co-CEO seat, believing it was her rightful place beside Rich. But as she watched her daughter execute this flawless, brutal coup, the taste of victory turned to ash in Brooke's mouth. Brooke had always viewed Hope as the better version of herself, pure, untainted, and guided by an unwavering moral compass. To see Hope wield blackmail, extortion, and public humiliation with such chilling proficiency sent a visceral shudder of terror down Brooke's spine. As Brooke stood in the newly acquired executive office, looking at the daughter who had just handed her the world on a silver platter, she did not feel pride. She felt a profound, paralyzing fear. Hope's eyes, once so full of light and optimism, were now hard, calculating, and completely devoid of remorse. Brooke realized, with a sinking feeling of dread, that she had pushed her daughter to this precipice. In her relentless quest to empower Hope to fight back against the Forresters, Brooke had accidentally created a monster that rivaled even the most ruthless matriarchs of the Forrester dynasty. Hope was no longer the victim. She was the predator. And as Brooke accepted the co-CEO position, she was haunted by the terrifying realization that the daughter she loved was gone forever, replaced by a stranger who was willing to sacrifice every ounce of her humanity upon the altar of absolute power. The war between the Logans and the Forresters had entered a dark,